Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting right into the thick of it, focusing on resilience.
Yeah, specifically the language of resilience.
Exactly. We're aiming to give you a shortcut to understanding some key terms using the DRI International Glossary for Resilience.
We'll be covering clauses R, S, 2U, VW, and then we'll talk about the cited references section too.
Our goal here is clarity,
Mhm.
to really break down these definitions so you grasp the essentials, whether you're deep in the field or just curious.
And it's worth noting, DRI didn't invent all these terms. They curated them, picked the best-in-class definitions from recognized sources.
Oh.
Smart approach.
It really is. So think of us as your instructors for this session. We'll go through these term by term. Ready to jump into the R's?
Let's do it. First up is readiness.
Okay.
This one's from BCIDRJ. That's the Business Continuity Institute and Disaster Recovery Journal. And readiness is basically all the activities you implement before an incident.
Proactive stuff.
Exactly. Things to support and enhance how you mitigate, respond, and recover. People often just call it preparedness, too.
Makes sense. Getting ready beforehand. Next is reciprocal agreement, also BCIDRJ.
Right. This is quite practical. It's an agreement between two organizations, or maybe two different business units inside one company.
Okay.
If they have similar setups, similar equipment or environments, they agree that one can recover at the other's location if needed.
Like a buddy system for operations.
That's a good way to put it. It highlights how collaboration helps build resilience, especially if you can't afford, say, a fully redundant site yourself.
Good point. Okay, next, reconstitution. This comes from FCD1.
Yeah, Federal Continuity Directive 1. Reconstitution is the process where the folks who are left, or replacement staff, get things back to normal operations.
So resuming the day-to-day grind after the disruption.
Pretty much, getting back to business as usual. Then there's recovery.
From NFPA 1600, the Fire Protection Standard People.
Right. They define recovery as the activities and programs designed to return conditions to a level that's acceptable to the entity.
Acceptable feels like the key word there.
It really is. It doesn't always mean perfect or exactly like before. Sometimes it's about getting to a functional new normal.
Okay. Following that, recovery point capability, BCIDRJ again.
Yes. This is about the specific point in time that you manage to restore data or systems to. So after an outage or maybe during an exercise, you look back and say, okay, we recovered the data as it was at noon.
So it measures how current the recovered data is and implicitly how much might have been lost since that point.
Exactly. Which leads nicely into the next term, Recovery Point Objective, or RPO. This is from ISO 22301.
The target, right?
Right. The RPO is the target point in time you need to restore information to so that the activity can resume properly. ISO adds a helpful note. You can think of it as the maximum data loss you can tolerate.
Ah, okay. So RPO is about setting that limit. We can't afford to lose more than, say, an hour's worth of data.
Precisely. And that decision has big implications for backup frequency, cost, technology, everything.
I bet. Next, recovery procedures. This sounds more technical. From CNSSI 4309.
It is. These are the specific actions needed to restore data files and the computational capability, basically. The processing power after a system failure. Your step-by-step IT recovery plan.
The real nuts and bolts. Got it. Then, recovery strategies. From Singapore MAS, the Monetary Authority.
These are broader, defined, management-approved, and importantly, tested courses of action for dealing with disruptions.
The tested part seems crucial.
Absolutely. An untested strategy is just theory. You need to know it actually works.
Okay. Then we have recovery time estimate, RTE. That's ASNZS 5050.
Right. This is the estimated time needed to get back to a certain level of functionality. And the key word is estimate. It accounts for uncertainties.
Acknowledging that things don't always go perfectly to plan.
Exactly. Which contrasts slightly with the next one, Recovery Time Objective, or RTO, from ACES International.
The objective, the goal.
Yes. RTO is the time goal for restoration. How quickly do you need to recover functions or resources based on how much downtime is acceptable?
So RTO is about acceptable downtime duration, whereas RPO is about acceptable data loss.
Perfect distinction. RTO is about time, RPO is about data. Then there's the recovery timeline, BCID-RJ again.
Okay.
This is the whole sequence laid out. All the recovery activities, the critical path you need to follow to get back to an acceptable level of operation. Could be minutes, could be weeks.
The full roadmap. Got it. Next, redundancy. FCD1 seems straightforward.
It is. Fundamentally, it just means having duplicate capabilities, backup systems, spare equipment, cross-trained staff.
If one fails, the other takes over, like a backup generator.
Classic resilience principle. Yeah. Build in spares. Next is regulation from ISACA.
Rules and laws?
Yep. Defined and enforced by some authority to regulate conduct. Think GDPR, financial regulations, healthcare rules. They heavily influence resilience planning.
Can't ignore those, especially in certain industries. Then remediation, CNSSI 4009.
Remediation is simply the act of fixing things, mitigating a vulnerability or a threat you've identified, addressing weak spots.
Patching the holes, okay. Residual risk, BCIDRJ.
This is important. It's the risk that's left over after you've done everything reasonably cost-effective to lessen the impact or probability of a risk. You have to factor in the organization's risk appetite here, too.
So the risk you kind of just have to live with.
Essentially, yes. You can't eliminate everything. Residual risk is what remains.
Okay. And then resilience itself, FCD1 again.
The big one. FCD1 defines it as the ability to prepare for and adapt to changing conditions and recover rapidly from disruptions. It explicitly includes withstanding and recovering from attacks, accidents, or natural threats.
So it really pulls together that preparation, adaptation, and recovery piece.
Exactly. It's the whole picture. Next, resource management. NFPA 1600.
Managing your stuff.
Basically, yeah. Having a system to identify what resources you have available and making sure you can access them quickly when needed. For prevention, mitigation, response, continuity, recovery, all stages.
Knowing what tools are in the toolbox and how to get them. Okay. Response. This one's from UNDRR, the UN office.
Yes, and it has two parts. First, the immediate ongoing actions to manage the effects of an incident, threats to life, property, operations, environment.
The immediate reaction.
Right. And second, providing emergency services and public assistance during or right after a disaster, saving lives, reducing health impacts, basic needs. UNDRR notes this is often called disaster relief, and the line between response and recovery can be fuzzy.
That initial critical phase, then related response plan from ACES.
This is the documented plan. Procedures and information compiled and kept ready for use in an incident. Your go-to guide.
The playbook for when things go wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Response time. ITIL.
This is a performance measure, how long it takes to complete an operation or transaction. Could be how fast IT responds to a ticket, for instance.
A measure of speed, then
Sure.
restoration, BCIDRJ.
Restoration is about getting back to the original state, planning for and doing the repairs, maybe moving back to your primary site, returning to normal operations there.
Back to home base, business as usual. How's that different from resumption? Also BCIDRJ.
Good question. Resumption is about restarting defined business processes and operations following a disaster. It often focuses on getting the most critical functions running first, within the time frames specified by your business impact analysis, maybe at an alternate site. Restoration is more about returning fully to the primary location.
Ah, okay. Resumption is getting key things working again, maybe not fully home yet. Got it. Return on investment, ROI.
A business classic. Measuring the expected benefit of an investment. Net profit divided by the investment cost. Often used to justify spending money on resilience measures.
Making the case for the budget. Okay, last R term is risk, also ITIL.
Risk is defined as a possible event that could cause harm or loss or affect achieving objectives. It's measured by probability, vulnerability, and impact.
Or potential for bad things to happen.
Right. And the glossary breaks it down further. Business risk, like loss of demand, disaster risk, potential losses from disasters, and operational risk, failed internal processes, tech failures, etc. Understanding these types helps focus efforts.
Makes sense. Then there's a whole cluster of related risk terms too, right?
Oh, yeah. Risk acceptance, risk analysis, risk appetite, how much risk you'll tolerate, risk assessment, risk avoidance, risk categories, risk criteria, risk evaluation, risk management itself, risk mitigation, risk reduction, risk tolerance, risk transfer, like insurance.
Wow, okay. A whole suite of tools for dealing with risk.
Absolutely. And finishing the R's are root cause and root cause analysis, or RCA, both from ITIL, finding the underlying reason for a problem, not just the symptom.
Getting to the fundamental issue. Phew, that's a lot of R's. Foundational stuff, though. Shall we move to S?
Let's do it. Starting with salvage, BCIDRJ.
Okay.
Salvage is about recovering the physical stuff after an incident. Personal effects, documents, office gear, computers, whatever can be saved.
The physical recovery of assets. Next, scenario. BCIDRJ again.
Scenarios are predefined situations used for planning. They describe potential interruption or loss to help with things like BIAs, strategy development, and exercise planning.
So thinking through what-if situations.
Exactly. And the definition notes they aren't predictions, just planning tools to test your thinking.
Good clarification. Then scope. ITIL.
Scope just defines the boundaries. What's in, what's out for a process, procedure, contract, whatever. Defining the limits.
Setting clear boundaries. Essential security. CNSI 4009.
Security is described as a condition you achieve through protective measures. These measures let an organization do its job despite threats to its information systems. It involves deterrence, prevention, detection, recovery.
A whole system of protection. And related to that, security controls. NIST SP 834.
Right. These are the specific safeguards management, operational and technical. Think firewalls, access rules, encryption, the practical things you implement to protect confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
The actual tools and techniques.
Yeah.
Service level agreement. SLA. BCI DRJ.
An SLA is that formal agreement between a service provider and their client, internal or external.
Right.
It spells out the quality, availability, scope, response times.
Yeah.
Crucially, it should cover normal times and disaster situations because needs might change.
Setting expectations clearly, especially for tough times. Then just service provider. ITIL.
Simple one. Any organization supplying services to customers, whether internal or external.
Your IT team, your cloud provider, anyone you rely on.
Okay.
Single point of failure. ACOF. ITIL again.
The dreaded SPOF. It's any component could be hardware, software, a person, even a process step that if it fails causes an incident and there's no backup or countermeasure.
Some of it, if it breaks, the whole thing breaks.
Pretty much. Identifying and getting rid of SPOFs is a huge part of building resilience.
Makes sense. Next, situational awareness. CNSSI 4009.
This is about knowing what's going on. Understanding your organization's security posture, the threat environment around you, what it all means together, the risk, and projecting that into the near future.
Yeah.
Constant vigilance.
Keeping your eyes open. Okay. Stakeholder. BCI DRJ.
A stakeholder is anyone with an interest in the organization's performance or success. Customers, employees, shareholders, the local community, regulators, first responders, a wide group.
And you need to consider all of them in your planning.
You really do. They all have different interests and needs, especially during a crisis. Next is standard. Got definitions from NFPA 1600 and ITEL here.
Okay.
Essentially, a standard sets mandatory requirements, uses the word shall. It's often suitable for being referenced by law or codes. It can also mean a code of practice or specification from a standards body like ISO.
A set of rules or best practices to follow. Then strategic, specifically related to service strategy in ITEL.
Right. This is the highest level of planning. Setting objectives, long-term plans, aligning with the overall vision. For resilience, it's defining your overarching goals.
The big picture direction.
Yeah.
Succession, FCD1.
This is about the formal, planned takeover of a position's duties if the incumbent is unavailable, dies, resigns, can't perform duties, ensures leadership continuity.
Planning for who takes over, important. Supplier, ITIL.
Just a third party supplying goods or services, but managing supplier risk is critical for resilience.
Your external dependencies. And lastly for S, supply chain. BCI DRJ.
This is the whole network, from raw materials through production, logistics, distribution, all the way to the end user. Includes all the partners involved.
And a break anywhere in that chain can cause problems.
Big problems. Understanding and managing supply chain risk is huge. Okay, onto the T's.
Let's keep going. Tactical. ITIL again.
Tactical is the middle ground between strategic and operational. It's about the medium-term plans, weeks to months needed to achieve specific objectives, how you execute the strategy.
Bridging strategy and action. Got it. Technological hazard, UNDRR.
This is a hazard coming from technology or industry. Accidents, infrastructure failures, dangerous procedures, think chemical spills, dam failures, transport accidents, industrial pollution.
Risks from the technology we rely on. Okay, telework site, FCD1.
An approved place other than the usual office where an employee works. Hugely relevant now, and a key resilient strategy for many.
Remote work capability. Makes sense. Test, BCI DRJ.
A test is typically a pass-fail evaluation of a specific component. Infrastructure, hardware, building systems, generators. Verifying individual parts work as expected, often part of maintenance.
Checking the individual pieces. How's that different from testing? That's ASIS.
Good question. Testing is broader. ASIS defines it as activities to evaluate the effectiveness of a plan against objectives. It usually involves exercises to test teams and reveal weaknesses in the overall preparedness and response or continuity plans.
So test is checking a component, testing is evaluating the whole plan and the people.
That's a great way to think about it, and guiding that is the test plan from FIEC.
The plan for the test or testing.
Exactly. The document outlining the scope, objectives, and methods for your testing activities. The blueprint.
Okay. Next, threat.
ACIS.
A threat is a potential cause of an unwanted incident, something that could result in harm to people, assets, systems, the environment.
The potential danger. Then the threat assessment. CNSSI 4009. This is the formal process of evaluating the degree of threat and describing its nature. How serious is it? What does it look like?
Understanding the specifics of the danger and threat monitoring. Also CNSSI 4009.
That's the ongoing analysis,
Yeah.
looking at audit trails, logs, other info to actively search for events that might be security violations. Keeping watch.
Active surveillance. Okay. Training. BCIDRJ.
Training is more formal than just awareness.
Mm.
It aims to build specific knowledge and skills needed for job performance, especially for those with recovery duties. Equipping people properly.
Building competence. And the last T is trigger. BCIDRJ.
A trigger is simply an event that causes a system or plan to initiate a response, the thing that sets things in motion.
The starting gun for the plan. Okay, moving to only one term here.
That's right. Unified Command, defined by NIMS, the National Incident Management System.
Okay.
It's an incident command system structure used when multiple agencies have jurisdiction over an incident or it crosses jurisdictional lines. Ensures everyone works together smoothly.
Coordination in complex situations. Makes sense. Now for V.
Starting with vital records. BCIDRJ.
These sound important.
They are. Records essential for the organization to keep functioning or reconstitute after an emergency. Also crucial for protecting legal and financial rights, the organizations and individuals.
The absolute must-have information. The definition mentions similar terms, too.
Yes, FCD1 defines essential records, which is broader and includes vital records plus other needed info, broken into emergency operating records and rights interest records. And it specifically defines legal and financial rights records, things like payroll, Social Security, insurance records, all critical info.
Okay, so slightly different scopes, but all critically important records. Next, vulnerability.
BCIDRJ.
Vulnerability is the degree of exposure, how much a person, asset, process, etc. is exposed to the negative effects of a risk or event. Identifying weaknesses.
Where you're susceptible. And lastly for V, vulnerability assessment. CNSSI 4709. This is the systematic checkup. Examining a system or product to see how adequate the security is, find deficiencies, predict effectiveness of proposed fixes, and confirm fixes worked.
Proactively finding and fixing those weaknesses. Okay, final letter section, W.
Almost there. First is walkthrough, ISACA.
Like walking through a plan.
Essentially, a thorough demonstration or explanation detailing each step of a process, making sure everyone understands how it works.
Step-by-step clarity, wallet card, FFIEC.
Simple but useful. Portable cards with emergency contact info for customers and employees. Quick access to key numbers in a crisis.
Low tech, high value sometimes. And the last definition, warm site, BCIDRJ.
A warm site is an alternate facility that's partially equipped. It has some hardware, communications, power, cooling, but needs more setup software customization before it's fully operational for backup.
So it's not instantly ready like a hot site, but better than an empty cold site.
Exactly. It's that middle ground. Requires some effort to activate.
Okay, that covers all the definition clauses. Now let's talk about the cited references. Why is this section so important?
It's crucial because it shows where these definitions come from. Like we said, DRI didn't just make these up. They acted as curators, selecting established, respected definitions from a really wide range of authoritative sources.
And looking at the list, it's incredibly diverse.
It really is. You've got international standards, bodies like ISO, regional ones like ASNZS for Australia and New Zealand. You have major professional associations, ACIS for security, ISA for IT governance and audit.
And huge industry voices like BCI and DRJ combining their glossaries.
Right. Then there's significant input from government bodies, especially the U.S. FEMA, through FCD1 and NIMS, NIST for standards and tech, CNSS for national security systems.
We also see financial regulators like FFIEC in the U.S. and the Monetary Authority of Singapore.
Exactly. Plus IT service management best practices from ITIL, emergency management from NFPA, cybersecurity expertise from SANS, even the UN's Disaster Risk Reduction Office, UNDRR, and national bodies like the UAE's and SEMA.
It's truly a global, multi-sector effort reflected in these sources. It's not just one perspective.
Not at all. It's security, IT, business continuity, emergency management, government, international bodies, all contributing to this shared understanding. This collaborative approach drawing from so many respected sources, is what gives the glossary its weight and relevance.
It ensures the definitions aren't just one group's opinion, but reflect a broad consensus on best practices.
Precisely. It makes the glossary robust and widely applicable.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it really underscores how vital a common vocabulary is in the resilience space. Understanding these terms is foundational.
Absolutely. Clear communication hinges on everyone meaning the same thing when they use terms like RTO, RPO, or resilience itself.
And it's good to remember this isn't static. You mentioned DRI reviews and updates this.
Yes, they have a major revision cycle, I think every 4 years, plus ongoing updates to keep it current with changing standards, laws, and the threat landscape. It has to evolve.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, as you work on building resilience, really think about how using these terms consistently can improve collaboration and understanding in your own context.
Definitely explore the full glossary if you haven't.
Yeah.
The cited references themselves are great resources too.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with.
Yeah.
In a world facing increasingly complex and interconnected challenges, how much more effective could we be globally if we truly shared this common language of resilience? Could that shared understanding itself be a fundamental resilience strategy?
That's a powerful thought. A shared vocabulary as a building block for collective security. Definitely something to mull over.